So yeah, I want to see some of your Burning Man videos.
Oh man, some of them are pretty intense. I had one where I was just doing the survey, wasn't even drilling down a claim, and I think it's good evidence to show that the survey is incredibly effective in a tangential way, in a way that's not direct towards a belief, because somebody started crying on camera. And I had no idea why. It was kind of out of nowhere. But a lot of these concepts on the survey are connected to belief claims that people hold.
Yeah.
And even though you're just talking about the epistemology, they can be thinking about particular claims while they're thinking about the epistemology. And I have no idea what those claims are. It could be claims about an afterlife or a God belief or all sorts of things. And it can really emotionally affect people. So
sometimes I'll tear up during conversations, depending on what we're talking about.
Yeah, you've had some intense ones, like that one where you sat down with Reed, and that guy told you that he lost his son.
Yeah, that's
holy cow.
That's difficult. Yeah, that was the first time I met Reed, and that was it was so strange because it was, first of all, it was a very difficult conversation. He had a very powerful belief claim and a very powerful reason for the belief, it seemed, and then I was like, on top of that, I was performing SE in front of the person who I learned SE from.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like that layer, right? That Reed is sitting there, and I'm like, gosh, Reed, I've watched all your videos, and now like you're sitting here, and I'm like, yeah, that was it made it personal that way, so it was interesting. Yeah,
I can only imagine, like, not knowing. I can imagine that being difficult to focus. It's already difficult for an IL to focus when their friends are looking over their shoulder.
Yeah,
and like.
Right.
The reverse, if you're doing the interview and you have, like, your peers looking over your shoulder, that might...
The thing was, I don't think he was, I didn't know at the time, but I don't think he was even hearing what I was saying at the time. I think we were having some transmission issues or something.
Was I trying to charge the car at that point?
We had,
maybe. And I have, affected myself now that I've started live streaming, probably in like 2019 at some point, and that makes me a little bit more stressed, because then I'm like, I have to use some brain power just to think, what is the audience thinking at this moment right now, and do I need to be? It's like, I know I'm just sitting there. It's probably boring for people, and that just takes some cycles to deal with. Before I was just out there, and only I was going to see the footage, so it's not a big deal.
Well, do you find that when you're doing SE for content, that this is a question for you guys, that you guys do it differently, or you're kind of doing it with a third eye sort of watching you while you do it, and changes how you do it? I don't know.
Yeah, like for me, when the camera's there, it's harder for me to focus, and at least initially, and then it starts to just dissolve in the background, and I forget about it.
Yeah.
But once I like hit the button and I get all the camera angles right and all the audio equipment ready, like all of that is making me think about the camera stuff, and it's hard to focus on them, on the IL, and that's really what I want to be doing.
It's so wild. We're on this. I've met Peter for the first time, and that was cool because he wrote the book, How to Have Impossible Conversations. And the claim that we're, talking to students about now is like the hottest of the hot button claims. And, sometimes I feel like I'm sweating a little bit talking about this stuff, but then I have to kind of step back for a second and tell myself, it's just another claim. Mm-hmm. Just treat it like another claim. It may be a claim that you agree with, maybe a claim that you don't agree with, or parts of it or not parts of it. And so I've had difficulty with doing this personally, separating myself out a little bit, because it's it's so immersive right now in the sense of this is kind of what everyone is talking about and what everyone is
And who do you
heated
mean,
about.
Who do you mean by everyone?
Well, just you hear it in the media and you hear just wokeness and what it means and you know and are there dangers and or not, or I mean, you know what I mean? It's and so I think because of all, it's so fresh, and I haven't really started even thinking about it until very recently, because it just wasn't so much in my world. But I just thought that for me now it's just kind of hard to, you know, it's easier for me to do claims that we talked about this before, that claims that I just have no connection with or anything. Like if someone comes and talks to me about obscure religion that I have never heard of before, and I am free to do SE like I have never heard it before because I haven't ever heard it before. But now, you know, I think because we're dealing with fresh definitions of things, and I find it harder for me to think about it clearly. That's what I'm saying. Reed?
Yeah, as you started in the atheism movement, I see this is kind of continuing on in that tradition. I see wokeness as a kind of religion, new religion. So we're just continuing on as we are, and I think it is a bad religion, definitely worse than Christianity.
How is it like a religion? Like what is the similarities, do you think, like wokeness is to? Is it the unfalsifiability aspect of it, or is there other things that in your mind?
It's similar to Calvinism. It's kind of a Gnostic faith, and it's also revolutionary and like humanistic. They don't ground their axioms in a god. They ground their axioms in this Marxist concept of like socialist man. Like eventually in the utopia, whatever the humans will be, that's like where they're trying to get to, and it's like a pragmatic epistemology. Like theory is true, and any action that gets us closer to utopia is true. That is the thing that's driving the underlying.
The action is truth.
Yeah, pragmatism, and it's also Gnostic, where certain people with certain identity characteristics have more access to this pragmatic way of getting to the utopia. It's like they know how to get there. They should be deferred to, and we should go that way. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Has anyone actually had someone who, like, I haven't seen an SE interview where somebody actually lays it out like that.
No one really has that deep of an understanding of it. It's just there. Most people
This
have.
is what concerns me.
Most people have the meme level. Like, I just love
Right.
Jesus.
Right.
That's the meme level of Christianity. I just love Jesus. I just want justice, social justice.
Well, right. So when I do SE claims with people who have woke ideologies, it's more like, I want everyone to.
There's concentric circles of populations. There's like the general public is the widest, and then you have like the priests, and then you have the theologians. So like theologian, and then there's like the prophets. So you've got like Marx and Hegel are these prophets, and then it goes into the priests like D'Angelo and Kendi and all these people like Kimberly Crenshaw. These people are more tied into the theory and the ideas that are propelling all of this.
Yeah. I think maybe what you're saying is that when we do SE on the street with people, it's people like who the claims are racism is bad.
Well, it's like that, and I just want to stop seeing black people killed when they don't have any weapons on them at all.
Right.
And to me, that seems like a pretty fair ask.
Yeah, and we shouldn't exaggerate that problem to like such a problem where we need to start burning down the country. It's not that type of problem.
okay, how do we know that? How do we know it's not that kind of problem? Does that what it hinges on then? That what we are, how intense we're seeing the problem or not problem?
Or how we go about resolving the issue. Like, how do we resolve the problem, I guess.
You know what I mean, Reed?
Well, I'm wondering, I question the premise of there's a problem that there's racist police in America. Like, that needs to be tackled. How many unarmed white people are killed by white police?
Well, that's an honest. It's an honest question. I mean, I'm just trying to understand. You know, trying to understand.
And if there is a problem, we have a judicial system and ways to deal with that.
Yeah. But it's something. So, yeah, I'm just trying to really get my head around it. I really am. Honestly, I'm really. I can't be more honest when I'm trying to understand it for the first time, but without, all the noise around it. I'm really just trying to understand, the principles behind it and the priests, I guess you're saying, versus the people who just have sort of these random views, about how the world should be.
Yeah, I mean, I personally I don't have very many strong opinions in general, which kind of makes me feel kind of like strange even being here or even talking about this issue at all. I'd much rather just do SE.
Okay.
So, like, if somebody comes here and they say there's a problem, I want to know how they know that. If they say there's not a problem, I want to ask them how they know that.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Either way, yeah, I don't really have...
Yeah, no, I'd like to, when I think about it, I'd like to think about it as another kind of claim. And just, like any other claim, that we might come across.
Mm-hmm.
I agreed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want some liberal tolerance in society. And I see this new religion as kind of blocking that from happening, and it's reversing those values, and I want those values to return and have new life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What, I might have asked you this before, like, well, how do you think we got here then? Like, what is your thought about that? Like, what led to this? Like, how are we here? I mean, that's a big question. It's a big question.
That's
Yeah,
a long
I
story.
get it.
Cliff Notes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Rousseau to Hegel to Marx to Marcuse to postmodernists to the neo-Marxists, and then that fuses into critical social justice, and then add in the critical pedagogy from the 70s onward, and then takeover of the teachers' colleges, and then 30 years later we have a bunch of radical administrators and professors, and then that gets a bunch of students out in the world, and then we've got campus protests and woke corporations, and then we've got global elite NGOs that are trying to use this as a form of way of getting power. And that's the problem.
What do you think the power is to, like, power to do what, do you think?
Create their vision of the world that they want. And that is, they talk about it all the time. And they've got books about it, they got lectures, and
yeah.
So, like, I went out during the 2020 protests and made a video that didn't really get a lot of attention. But I was just asking people what would make them happy, what would satisfy their needs to be out on the street and protest. And maybe I wasn't asking the right questions, though. I was just trying to see what people wanted. And I didn't hear anything that was strictly illiberal too much. I mean, maybe you guys, it was a couple years ago that I released it. I don't know if you saw it.
Attempting to burn down a courthouse is illiberal.
Yeah, though, would you say that attempting to burn down a courthouse is, like, because when I was talking to people, they weren't saying we need to tear this place down. They were saying, I'd like for things to change. I want...
How about we just ignore people when their problems aren't legitimate?
I'm sorry, say that again?
We could ignore people when their problems aren't legitimate and arrest people when they commit violence?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
Oh, you mean from the video that I released?
Why are the protesters out there?
If you're asking me why they're out there,
Yeah.
I think it's by and large because of COVID.
Yeah.
Because people are getting unemployment checks, because they weren't doing very much, because it was all of this other added stuff. Plus, Donald Trump was adding fuel to the fire by basically just saying the most agitating things ever every single day in the news, and people didn't know where to put their anger. This is how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah. Not an excuse to burn down their local courthouse.
Right. Though I think
municipal government, it's completely different.
Right.
And it's like a leftist government.
Though those people that were trying to...
In Portland.
Yeah. Those people that were trying to burn it down, and, throwing glass bottles, and I mean, it was just chaos in Portland. Portland was like every single day for 200 days. And I lived right outside of a police station. So I talked to a lot of these people often. And I didn't get the sense from them that they wanted to treat people illiberally. Like they weren't trying to make, like, so I read Cynical Theories. I think it was a great book. I think more people should read it. I think it's a great book. I just think that the connection between wokeism, which is like this weird way to what was the word I used yesterday? Homogenous. I don't think that wokeism is as homogenous as the literature claims it is. I think people are trying to make a difference, and they're having a hard time articulating what that is.
Are you saying that like it's an identity assigned to a group where the group is not as cohesive as in a ideological sense as it might be?
Yeah,
as
I
the
think
term implies.
Or my takeaway from the interviews I did was that everybody had their own idea on how to fix the problem. It didn't seem very unified.
So I think where we all are, I think, which is awesome, we're on the same page here, is that we would all three of us, I think, describe ourselves as liberal in the sense that we want views to be presented, and we want, kind of a classical liberal, if that's the right idea, I'm using the right concept, but just may the best ideas win, or the correct ideas win, or the most, or whatever's aligned with a more objective truth win, whatever that is. And I think it's just, I just find it interesting that we're, trying to work through that with this basic, we have all these kind of basic core, I think we have these basic core values, and we're trying to understand this movement with that in mind. Right?
Yeah, I suppose so. Like, notice how, though, that there's not protests happening, like, every single day anymore. Like, why do you think that is?
There wasn't a precipitating event that gave it people a cover to do it. There's no George Floyd happening.
That's part of it.
Last month, and we're not locked down for like 3 months before that.
That's another big part of it, if you ask me. I think that's a huge element of it. The pandemic, I think, contributed to that more than I'm hearing from anti-woke people.
Yeah, and so when I think of like illiberal ideas, and right, if there is a large segment of woke ideology on campus that shuts down conversation, that says, we can't, because of a certain belief you hold or a certain attitude or traits that you have that you can't change, you can't speak. Yes, of course, that is, I think all three of us would agree that is antithetical to conversation and human flourishing and all sorts of things. And I think, and so I see that. I get it. And then I also see, and I'm not trying to do whataboutism, but I'm also like, if I look on the right and I see a contingent of the population trying to usurp democracy and steal an election, right? And that's as liberal as it gets as well. And I'm just trying to, both can be incorrect, and maybe what I'm trying to assign the threat, where we need to, and we can concentrate on both things if we need to, but where we need to, what is the bigger concern here for our society, maybe in the short run or the long run, and where our laser focus should be at this time.
Anywhere there's illiberalism, there's that on the left and the right. In religion, anywhere that's happening, that's my main focus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And in the spirit of SE, and this is why I do it, is where we live at this time, it frightens me. It literally frightens me that we have intense beliefs about things, no matter where it comes from on the political aisle. It doesn't matter to me in that sense, but beliefs that people hold that are unfalsifiable, and they are intense. They will die for these beliefs, and they will wreck other people's lives for their beliefs, knowingly or unknowingly. And
one way to get there is through the unique voice of color method of justifying claims. That's an unfalsifiable. That's just a non-objective way of testing claims, and you have to, like, I believe X because of my testament of the Holy Spirit, or I believe X because of the unique voice of color, lived experience, gets me there and allows me to justify it. And there's no objective way to test those things. It's just it violates the rule of no personal authority. Like, there's the two rules I care about is no final say and no personal authority for your claims. You have to get there objectively, and no answer is final. It's always open to criticism, forever. And I see.
So I hear that as a problem, and if I heard that, I would consider that a problem. Though I'm wondering if anyone's really saying that. I mean, I hear people talk about the other people talking about it, but I rarely actually see anyone actually talk about it.
When you hear people say, as a blank identity, positionality, position, blah, 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 as a black man, as a black woman, as a trans woman, blah blah blah, that is irrelevant to the truth of the claim, whatever they're about to say.
Yes, no one has special acquisition, a special relationship to the truth, objective truth that others don't have. And theoretically, that's what we're saying?
I guess, like, we're talking about social interactions between people, right? So, like, it's okay. So I mean, I've told you about this before. I had no idea I had Jewish heritage until I was like halfway through high school. Then I find out. So I tell a few people, and then I don't hear the end of it. It's like I get teased. There's jokes. My friends are making fun of me. They're laughing about it. They're kind of, it's in good spirits some of the time, but then it just got annoying. And then I had to tell them to stop, and they wouldn't stop. Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is I told my friends about my Jewish heritage, and then it was like it was like people treated me differently. So like
that's illiberal, yeah.
Yeah. And so when people say, as a fill in the blank person, I have this unique perspective, I can relate to that. Mm-hmm. Only because I thought everyone's, like, as soon as I tell somebody that I had a heritage and there's in the culture a certain way to think about that group of people, and then all of a sudden people are thinking about me in that different way,
yeah,
I can see how people are treated differently merely by, some sort of
characteristic you can't change.
Yeah, immutable characteristic. And so it's not like there's nothing to that.
And your criticism of them for that, what is the value you're appealing to criticize them for that?
I guess like when I hear being of a different group.
Is it because your group has a historical legacy of oppression? Or is it because all men are created equal and...
No. So this is in response to someone saying, as a blank person, I have a different means of obtaining knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that when people play that card to explain how they know a certain thing is true, it's not... They're using that to explain their experience.
Yeah, and that's a bad reason to criticize them, for people for judging you. It's like, I'm a human being with feelings, and can you empathize with me for judging me based on something that should not be judged about?
Yeah.
Or that, like, what do you believe about me? Is that true? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, so we're talking about two kinds of truth.
Yeah. Are those beliefs good?
Right.
Are those ideas true? Are those values good values?
Yeah. I think when we're talking also about two kinds of truths, there's like an objective truth in the sense that if we're talking about some kind of objective reality, I think that that's not a rational thing to say that there's one kind of group or one person or certain people have special access to an objective truth that other people don't have access to. I get that. But I think maybe what you're talking about is more of a subjective lived experience.
Yeah, let's like make it less abstract and more concrete. Just like police interaction, like how I interact with the police. And I can tell you that when I was in college, when I drove a certain kind of really beat up Honda and I had long hair, I got pulled over all the time for nothing. Almost always. I got pulled over for not signaling my turn signal soon enough, or whatever excuse that they wanted to give me, and I got pulled over all the time. And then I get a slightly better car and I cut my hair and I stopped getting pulled over, but I've been driving the same. I didn't get better at driving, really. I drove the same both times, and that's me making an observation about my appearance and how the police interacted with me or didn't interact with me. And I think that sometimes people say, as a black person, my interaction with the police, sometimes like people don't have bad experiences interacting with the police. But I think that's when people play the card as a fill in the blank kind of person. There's something to it sometimes. I mean, I can't just discredit it, So then again, I also don't hear people play that card very often either. So like, I also don't even hear very many claims. Like when I do street epistemology, I hardly ever get any claims about wokeism at all. It's almost always like something else. Like the closest thing is like homelessness is a problem and we need to find solutions for that. I mean, I'd like to know more solutions for that sort of thing, but that might be derailing the conversation or changing the conversation in a different direction. So,
no, but
does dismantling capitalism include that part of the solution?
I haven't had anyone sit at my table tell me that they want to dismantle capitalism. I don't think. I mean, maybe.
I mean, I hear that all the time, and it's all in the literature, and I don't hear it. Well, I've heard people at UCLA talk about that.
Maybe that's what the disconnect is that, right, there's the claims I hear on the street that people are associated with, with woke movements or woke claims, and then there's the literature, and sometimes they don't jive with me, and maybe I'm just not I'm not asking the right questions, or I'm not in the right place of the country, or the right people aren't talking to me, or that's maybe part of where I'm just hard for me to line it up a little bit, and but I want to line it up correctly. I do.
And the ideology itself does not lend itself well to conversation. Like maybe it's a selection bias because we're out there trying to get the public to talk to us.
Yeah.
So if someone is really into it, it's like they may want to talk to people, but that's also based on the postmodern axioms of like discourses and like language itself perpetuates oppression. If you start talking about certain things, then that might be a reason why we're not hearing it so much in person. It's more so within the literature and when they're talking to themselves at conferences in a safe space. So maybe that's part of it.
Yeah. And that's what's happening. I mean,
that's probably why we're not getting a lot of people at these events, because the nature of the ideology does not lend itself to being in that type of space.
Yeah, it's a liberal thing, classically liberal thing, I guess, that we're doing.
That's a liberal thing to do.
Yeah.
To openly talk about your ideas like that.
Right.
One thing that I did find concerning is during the protests, when I was trying to get interviews, it was hard to get interviews, like really hard to get somebody. And like, if I were, I protested against the Iraq war a lot. And if somebody came up to me with a camera and they like, I have some questions about the Iraq war, I'd be like chomping at the bit to talk to them about how I thought the war needed to stop.
So you're saying that's how the ideology insulates itself in a sense? Go ahead.
Wokeism doesn't have a 1 Peter 3:15.
Yeah, right.
To give a defense for your
faith, yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's hard for me to wrap my head around it a little bit. And because in my world, I just don't come across it that much. And I just, and people have these views, they're not expressing them to me. And I'm always asking for intense beliefs people have. That's what I love doing. Mm-hmm. And, So is that where it comes down to is... Go ahead.
Yeah, so if the ideology itself does not lend itself to conversation, then the solution is just firing people and getting them out of power, especially out of college teachers' education. Like, if we wage a magic wand, as Peter says, and got everyone out of the university that's woke, they'll just come back through the teachers' colleges in a few years. So
what, and how much? And I'm honestly asking this out of just pure ignorance. Like, this college we're about to go to, university, Purdue, like, what % of the professors do we think we're talking about here? Like, what?
It's more so the administration
and
some of the professors in the humanities.
All right.
Probably virtually all of them in the humanities, maybe.
So that would seem sizable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because, you know, granted, when I went to, you know, I have a PhD in psychology, and when I went to school, and it was, you know, I ended up finishing in the late 90s, this wasn't a thing, and I don't remember this really, you know, I guess maybe it's just because it's more recent, I guess we're saying, that this kind of stuff was never discussed, at least in any of my classes, or by any of my professors, but yeah.
So I took political science, and I read Foucault and Bell and a lot of the things that cynical theories writes about. Mm-hmm. But no one ever said, like, this is truth. It was more like, in order to be a well-read person, you should probably read these very popular writings.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And University of Oregon is a pretty liberal arts college. That's where I went. Mm-hmm. And
I guess what I'm saying, like,
I argued against a lot of what I heard, especially the stuff about truth back then. And I, you know, got high scores in my papers when I was critical of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know. My experience is...
Yeah, I graduated college in 2011. When did you graduate?
2009.
Yeah, it's like 2013 and after is like...
Yes, that's probably what I've experienced with it when I was
really?
an academic.
Is like when it's really starting to pick up. Because then it's like the generation of the professors that maybe we had are starting to retire, and this new crop that started coming in from all the woke teachers colleges starting to get into positions and starting to get tenure and jobs for life. Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, part of what I was talking to Peter about is that, I don't know if this is the right term, I don't know if it's availability heuristic, in the sense that, you know, he's in academia, and
He was, yeah.
Or was, true. But he was in the place where you would concentrate that on and see it the most, and me, I'm not anywhere near that these days, and so I don't see it. And so, I don't know, it's a situation where someone could be, whether Peter is over concerned by the threat or I'm under concerned by the threat. That's possible. You know what I'm saying? Or there's a happy medium. I don't know, because if you live it like Peter's experience and you get fired because of, you know, you're going against an ideology. Well, yeah, I see. You would think it's a pretty damn big threat, and for me, it just hasn't been in my world, you know. And when I hear people talk about it in these like fire alarm ways, it's hard for me to match it, and that's what I'm really trying to understand. Honestly, I'm really trying to assign my concern to it. Mm-hmm. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Help me.
The closest parallel is the Cultural Revolution in China. Like, Mao just spent 3-4 years to radicalize an entire youth population for the purpose of competing against political rivals. And that killed millions of people. Like, that's a case study of human nature.
Yeah, so you think we're like, how close are we to there?
I don't think we're there yet in the U.S., but that's like the trajectory we're on, because it's all the same epistemology and values, appealing to group identity and the structure of authority and the black identity versus red identity, incentives, where certain identity characteristics are bad, certain identity characteristics are good, and you can transition from the bad to the good to get virtue, and that's happening.
And in your mind, like, where we are in this country, do you think that we are, as a whole, like going down that route, I guess it's to the left, and where we get to sort of these mass killings, as you say, or as a country as a whole, we're going to the right to like fascism, where we'll have killing in a different way. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, there's the backlash on the opposite side.
Yeah.
Against it, and that's just it's like the horseshoe theory. They're touching.
Horseshoe theory is for real, man.
yeah,
It's like the majority is like starting to leak down to the bottom. I want the people I want people more at the top of the horseshoe, not the bottom where they're touching.
and that's where I see we come in.
There's
like,
always going to be fringe people.
Of course.
There, so.
Yeah.
Right, and and I think and that's what I'm trying to that's trying to put my head around it. Like, is this a perfect horseshoe that we're talking about? Is it a lopsided horseshoe, or I mean, what you're trying to? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, where should my concern lie? Because I see the problem. I do with woke ideology. I get it. And just purely from a street epistemological perspective, what we practice from an epistemological perspective, but I also see in our country just this inclination towards fascism, and maybe it's my world, maybe it seems to me that is a bigger threat, at least immediately, and I could be completely wrong about how I see it, but I want to see it accurately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to get the real numbers and the real data. How would we do that? It's hard to know. Just polling, but who's going to be honest with polling right now? Like, institutions are starting to be less trusted. Even if there was a poll coming out, no one would believe it.
Well, I was just wondering, like, that's what if we're at the wrong dance, I want to go to the right dance. You know what I mean? Because we're doing this, and I get the reason why. I get the understanding. I get it. I'm not trying to lessen what we're doing here. I just want to be at the right party, at the right dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I feel like I'm kind of almost sort of even dragged into this discussion by the SE, by you guys, kind of almost. Like, no one comes to me hardly ever with woke views at my table.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Other things to talk about. And I'm on this tour with Peter and you guys, and that's the only reason why, like, I kind of feel almost like out of place.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Maybe it's just the people you hang out with have a different lineage of ideology.
I guess.
You know.
Or, like, I guess so. Or maybe I'm just not seeing, like, when I do belief claims, and I'm just really interested in epistemology.
Yeah.
And the reason why I like to do the survey is because it goes straight to the epistemology. I don't even need to know the claim.
And the values related to it, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested in encouraging people to critically think about how they think.
I agree. Yeah. And that's what I say. That on a meta perspective, I'm just trying to, like, I feel like it's like a stressful conversation that we're having, like, talking about, and it shouldn't be, because we're talking about, and I was trying to say at the beginning, we're talking about a claim, just a claim, but for some reason, this claim is a claim that is, I don't know, it's just because the time we're talking in, or
that's another thing. Like, what do you mean by this claim? It's non-homogeneous. Like, there's not.
Well, that's what you're saying. Well, I didn't mean to say that. I
sure.
Didn't say, yeah. But just like if we were talking about like a traditionally religious claim, that it just it'd be more of a breezy conversation. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because it'd be more specific. Like, this thing exists. Or So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't want to feel uncomfortable.
I'm not uncomfortable necessarily. It's just more so like, if people were protesting, I would want to ask, how do we encourage a discussion? People aren't really protesting anymore, so it's like. And there were some changes in Portland, like the Portland Street Response is like a new organization where we like reallocated funds from the police department to this like new kind of way of doing law enforcement. I'm really curious to see how it'll work out. If like if fewer people die or if the homicide rate declines, then great. Now we have evidence that some good came out of this. And if it doesn't decline, well, good. Also good. Because we know that this isn't working, and we need to try something different or go back to the way that we used to do things. And that's what puts the science in political science, is like trying to figure out what works, given a certain goal. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys, engaging this conversation. I think that's when we get probably 3 street epistemologists sitting and talking with each other, we try to be measured the way our responses, and sometimes I think maybe too measured. I try to think about what I'm saying, and I want to try to say things in correct ways, and
right.
Yeah. But I think it's cool that you guys are around. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And again, I think it's so wild that all 3 of us practice street epistemology, and we are so different people. We're just all 3 of us are very different, but we have the same kind of core values.
We may have time after our campus interviews just to hang out on campus
And
do some SE.
Do some real SE.
Like, we can just stay there. We can take all the equipment.
I got my GoPro.
And,
I would like to do that.
And stay there. I should probably take a shower though before I go.
Well, we can get out of your hair.
I'd like to be there. I'd like to leave here at 1:30.
Leave here at 1:30. What time is it
So
now?
we've got
Almost 12.
another 20 minutes. I guess we can talk if you want.
Well, what would you like to do, Reed? It's up to you. It's your show, man. You're like, this is. I don't know if this is going to be part of the doc or not, but this is more fluff than really anything.
Yeah. I'd love to see Pete try to do some street epistemology with people, and hopefully he does that today with his interviews.
Mm-hmm.
We should try to.
All right.
I don't know why he's not in that mode by default.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
I SE'd him a little
that
bit
was-
the other day on why he
interesting.
does or does not SE people
Yeah.
on this issue.
Do you want to listen to some of that you talked with him about?
I'd like to, but only if all of us are into it.
I mean, yeah, I'm not against it.